Welcome to the 5th press conference here in the Independent Media Center FCMC. Today, Saturday, July the 8th in Hamburg. Brief word on the procedure. Each spokesperson will have a few minutes to speak, and afterwards there will be a question and answer session in plenum. For our international guests, we'll offer a few more minutes to speak because we need more time to illuminate the context, and this is the case. Few words about the Media Center itself. We are an independent platform for independent journalists and media creators. We have been pleased to invite guests over the last few days and today as well, from local and also international organizations who illuminate the G8 summit for us. We offer a platform, a framework for these statements made by the spokespeople. That doesn't mean, however, and we need to state this expressly, that we associate ourselves in particular with the views expressed on the podium. Our aim is simply that we have as many perspectives as possible. However, with regard to the last few days, we would like to remind you this platform offers a reliable platform for reporting and opinion, and it is not an opportunity. It is not an opportunity for free and emotional debate, and we ask you to respect this. I'm pleased to welcome the following guests: Werner Rätz from the Alliance Solidarity Without Borders, not G20. Zazie Götz, Young People Against G20. Dr. Boga Sako, President of the Human Rights Association FIDHOP, and for the Human Rights and Democracy in Africa. Nico Berg, who is representing Bloc G20, with an additional statement on Friday, yesterday. Gabriele Heinecke, on her way here, she's from the Emergency Legal Aid, and she will give us a current legal estimations. Renate Angstmann-Koch, from the Trade Union of Journalists, on working journalistically over the last few days. I wish to ask Werner Rätz. Good morning, everybody. Armed conflict, millions of people in refugees, hatred all over the world, social fragmentation in dramatic extent, that this is a sign that something is not working right in the world. The ladies and gentlemen, a few meters from here, who are meeting in this city, won't change that. They're not the solution for these problems. They are the problem. They created the problems. And this is what we will be expressing in our protest at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Saleh Muslim, the chairwoman of the PYD from Syria, and from Black Lives Matter, two speakers who come from G20 countries, and they will be conveying the debates that are taking place in their countries. A climate activist from Colombia and criticist from Egypt also. Other local activists on the climate issue will be showing that there are indeed solutions in the world and which have hitherto been ignored by the international political sphere. Our alliance is a very broad alliance, many different organizations, which I can't list at this point. You are welcome to have a written summary, which in the form of a handout, which you are welcome to take with you after this press conference. After the violations of rights and that we've experienced over the last few days here in this city, we have a rather difficult situation. The people have, over the last few days, have shown that they will not have their right to demonstrate on the streets taken away from them. We have many moving pictures of people who are trying to exercise their right to demonstrate. Today, with our demonstration, we will be giving an adequate response to both sides of the debate, and we will not be deterred today. We wish to have a powerful demonstration this afternoon. We will be together, we will go walk together, and we will arrive together. We won't let leave anybody behind, and we won't be deterred by behavior by the police that is illegal. We are aware that we have a very varied membership, and we will express this wide range of voices at the Millerntor Platz. The speakers will give their perspective in a few minutes, and you are welcome to have one-to-one interviews at the demonstration. Please ask us after the press conference here this morning, and we are available at the Deichtorhallen until the end of the demonstration. So after the speeches here, later at 4 p.m. today, we will be available. And so we can give you more detail and where you can ask questions. On the handout that I've already mentioned, you can find information about the demonstration route and information about the number of participants we will be able to give you in about 2 hours after the demonstration has started. Thank you very much, Werner Rätz. And now Zazie Götz will give us her update on young people against G20. I'm from Young People.
Dolmetscherin muss noch mal mit.
Okay, danke. Hey, ich bin Zazie aus der Bildungsstreik AG von
I'm from the Education Strike, Young People Against G20.
Gestern Vormittag sind wir mit zahlreichen Schülerinnen, Studentinnen und
Yesterday morning we went onto the streets with numerous students from all over Hamburg.
Wir haben gegen die Politik der G20 und für ein selbstbestimmtes Bildungssystem für alle demonstriert.
And we demonstrated for our different education system that is self-determined.
Ursprünglich hatten wir mit 400 bis 800 Teilnehmerinnen und Teilnehmern gerechnet.
Originally we expected 400 to 800 participants, and by now 2,000 participants have shown up. That's much more than we expected, and without incident we were able to march through our route. This has shown that the young people are not violent in any way, and that they wish to signal that they are together in solidarity. We know that we do not want to be told what to do by anybody, and we wish to shape our future. Before this event, before this demonstration, the schools threatened the students if they attend, and that there would be consequences if they attended the demonstration. But I can clearly say that the intimidation attempts were not successful. It was more important to the students to have the chance of a better future than threats by the directors of the school. We are against people deciding over our heads at the G20 summit what our future will be. We had a very powerful demonstration. I was impressed with the atmosphere, and I hope to greet as many people today at the universal demonstration, which we will also take part in. I call all young people to join us. We want to share our idea of anti-capitalist approaches. And we also want to demonstrate for solidarity without borders. We are expecting over 1,000 participants today who have traveled here from all over Germany to join our block. Thank you very much for listening.
Vielen Dank, Zazie Götz. Und jetzt begrüßen wir herzlich Dr. Boga Sako.
And now I wish to welcome very warmly Dr. Boga Sako.
Welcome. The mic is working. The microphone is working.
Merci. Mesdames et messieurs, les journalistes, nous sommes à Hambourg à l'occasion d'une grande réunion mondiale, le G20. Pourquoi l'Afrique et un Africain peut s'opposer à une réunion du G20?
Ladies and gentlemen, dear journalists, we have come together here today to an event, a great event, the G20 summit, and which the African perspective has to be opposed.
La question de la démocratie et des droits de l'homme pose problème en Afrique.
Opposed for the reason the question of democracy and the question of human rights poses a problem.
Enseignant à l'université, on a pensé que la démocratie et les droits de l'homme étaient des valeurs universelles, que ce soit en Afrique, en Europe, aux États-Unis, partout. Mais ce n'est pas toujours vrai en Afrique.
The way we teach our students at university, democracy and human rights are universal rights that are valid all over the world. However, not for Africa.
En Afrique, la plupart des États ont adopté et intégré la démocratie, surtout après la chute du mur de Berlin en 89-90. L'Afrique a été boostée à accepter, à adopter la démocratie et les droits de l'homme.
In Africa, the majority of the African countries, particularly after the fall of the Berlin Wall, introduced democracy as a form of government.
Malheureusement, il se trouve que, alors que les peuples africains, les populations africaines, ils veulent la démocratie, ils veulent les droits de l'homme, il y a des dirigeants en Afrique en complicité avec certains chefs d'État européens ou occidentaux qui manipulent la démocratie, qui manipule les droits de l'homme contre les populations en Afrique.
Regrettably, in Africa, this is, despite the fact that most people in Africa want democracy, but the political leaders in Africa are complicit with the European important leaders, and they are responsible for manipulation, and that this democracy is not implemented. In fact, the values, democracy and human rights are instrumentalized by the African leaders in conjunction with European leaders, and I will give you a few examples.
En Tunisie, il y a un président qu'on appelait Ben Ali. Le président Ben Ali était au pouvoir depuis plus de 20 ans. Pour un démocrate, ça pose problème. Les Tunisiens, ils n'étaient pas d'accord. Mais le président français à l'époque, Jacques Chirac, il disait que non, Ben Ali, c'est un monsieur, il est bien, il respecte la démocratie. Quelques mois après, le peuple s'est soulevé, Ben Ali a fui le pouvoir.
To give you an example, Tunisia, the former President Ben Ali was in power for 20 years, and that's of course a problem for a democracy to have somebody so long in power. In that particular situation at that particular time, the President Chirac of France said, "Oh, what a great president, Ben Ali." But of course the people didn't think quite the same way. And shortly afterwards, there was an uprising against Ben Ali, and he had to leave power.
Le peuple, il veut la liberté, il veut la démocratie, mais il y a des dirigeants africains en complicité avec des dirigeants européens qui manipulent la démocratie. Deuxième exemple.
This example of Tunisia shows unequivocally that the population want democracy and human rights, but the African leaders, leading politicians, supported by the European and Western leaders, abuse their power.
Il y a un président qu'on appelait Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré qui a tué Thomas Sankara en 87. Tout le monde le sait. Blaise Compaoré, il a fait plus de 25 ans au pouvoir. Mais Blaise Compaoré était l'ami de la France. Il était l'ami de tous les dirigeants européens. Il partait aux États-Unis. Comment un président qui est au pouvoir pendant 25 ans, il peut être l'ami de ceux qui disent qu'ils parlent de démocratie en Europe et aux États-Unis?
A second example, let's take Burkina Faso. Blaise Compaoré was president for 25 years. He was responsible for the death of Simon Karas. He was a great friend of the political leaders in France and in the European Union.
Résultat, le peuple burkinabé a fait une révolution pour chasser Blaise Compaoré du pouvoir. Et il a fui, il est parti en Côte d'Ivoire, dans mon pays, pour être réfugié en Côte d'Ivoire, grâce à la France. Parce que c'est la France, c'est le président François Hollande qui a envoyé un hélicoptère pour prendre son ami, un dictateur que eux ils appellent démocrate.
The people of Burkina Faso didn't want Blaise Compaoré anymore as a president, and they were dissatisfied with his leadership. They started a revolution, and as a result, Blaise Compaoré had to flee to the Ivory Coast and was supported by François Hollande, who allowed him to flee with a helicopter
comme nous sommes à une conférence de presse, on va aller très vite et je vous passe un deuxième sujet. L'Afrique est indépendante depuis 1960 en général. Jusqu'à aujourd'hui, ça fait à peu près 50 ans. Mais l'Afrique n'est pas libre. Les pays africains ne sont pas libres. Ils ont été colonisés. Par exemple, la Côte d'Ivoire, le Sénégal, le Mali, Burkina, colonisés par la France. Mais jusqu'à aujourd'hui, la France tient encore ces pays. Elle manipule la démocratie, elle manipule l'économie, elle manipule les droits de l'homme.
We're here in a press conference, and so I will continue to the second subject that I would like to report on. Africa has been independent since around 1960. However, we have a long history of colonialism, and so we are not free. Countries such as Burkina Faso are determined very much by countries such as France.
De l'Afrique et de l'Occident, comme c'est l'exemple de la France que je connais le mieux, quand on parle de la France-Afrique, il y a deux choses que je dis pour terminer. La première des choses, c'est quoi? C'est que la France a colonisé des pays et elle a laissé dans ces pays une monnaie qu'on appelle le franc CFA. Comment des pays qui sont indépendants, des pays qui sont libres, la France les empêche d'avoir leur propre monnaie, marque de leur souveraineté, de leur indépendance, de leur liberté. Donc la France continue de piller les richesses en Afrique. Mon pays en est un exemple, la Côte d'Ivoire. Mais je peux le dire pour le Sénégal, je peux le dire pour le Mali, je peux le dire pour le Burkina Faso.
To say something about the relationship between France and Africa, France colonized Africa and was the colonial power in Africa for a very long time. In the wake of decolonialization, France issued or left behind a special currency, CFA, a currency very much under the influence of France, which continues to rob independence from many, many countries. That is true of Mali, that is true of Senegal, that is true for Ivory Coast.
De la monnaie. On peut prendre aussi l'autre exemple, la question de la justice. On a instauré la Cour pénale internationale. La Cour pénale internationale. Les Africains se demandent, mais pourquoi ce sont les Africains seulement qu'on juge à la CPI? Pourquoi des gens comme les Bush, ils ne peuvent pas aller à la CPI? Pourquoi des gens comme les Sarkozy, qui ont fait les guerres partout en Afrique, ils ne peuvent pas aller à la CPI? Ce sont des éléments qui bloquent la liberté de l'Afrique, l'indépendance de l'Afrique, la démocratie en Afrique et les droits de l'homme en Afrique.
This is also true for on the economic level, so that our dependence continues. But we can also talk about the justice system on the international level, the International Court of Human Rights, and which passes sentences on African leaders. And why do they not serve sentences on leaders such as Bush or Sarkozy? At the heart of things, it's a political system that blocks development in Africa.
C'est une réunion des grandes puissances mondiales, mais l'Afrique veut faire entendre sa voix. L'Afrique veut être libre. L'Afrique veut être indépendante, il faut que les dirigeants européens laissent l'Afrique se diriger elle-même. Que les dirigeants européens laissent les Africains diriger leur propre pays, leur propre destin. Je pense qu'à partir de ce moment, le G20 peut se tenir en Europe, aux États-Unis, mais les Africains seront tranquilles et ils seront libres. Merci.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear journalists, the meet of the G20 summit is the world's power coming together, but the African states, the African population want to be free and independent. Thus, our demand to politicians from the United States and from the European Union here in Hamburg to allow freedom for the African people so that they can shape their own future, their own destiny. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Dr. Boga Sako. Als nächster auf dem Podium.
Thank you very much, Dr. Boga Sako. And next I wish to welcome Nico Berg from Block G20. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to give you an update on the protest from the last few days. We got where we shouldn't have been, so we fulfilled our promise that I said into the cameras, and we've done what we said we were going to do. Before, we have always said what we were going to do. This summit only began with disruptions. There were blockades. Visitors had to take different routes. Melania Trump couldn't get into her overnight accommodation. The concert at the Elbphilharmonie could only start with delays. Therefore, we did what we said we were going to do. Thousands got inside the blue zone. We got where we shouldn't have been. And we disrupted the official routes to the summit. And with the courage of the many, we opposed the power of the G20. Yesterday, at 3 p.m., we were more than 10,000 people. We marched to Baumwall and from there to the Elbphilharmonie, and they had to pull up the bridge in between. The entire day, the police hit us with truncheons and attacked us with pepper spray. And in spite of this uninhibited violence, we did not give up. Block G20 as a protest was ended at 6 p.m. yesterday. However, many people continued to stay on the street. We also took part at the G7 in 2007 at Heiligendamm, and the chief of police said that we were too many people. And today we noticed that we have lost our fear of the police. And with this new feeling, we will take part in the universal demonstration. Today will be the day of critical evaluation of the topics of the G20. Yesterday was a protest. We conducted this protest under very difficult conditions, and we experienced police violence, a completely absurd police approach. The only answer they had for us was to clear sit-ins with a great deal of violent behavior. And although our preparations were cleared so quickly, people continued throughout the morning to go onto the street spontaneously, and this is Hamburg. The people of Hamburg have stood up and said no to the summit. Yesterday, the streets belonged to the people, not to the G20. And this is the feeling that we will go to the Solidarity Without Borders, not G20 demonstration today, and with the people who marched with us yesterday, and we will spend the day together, an expression of tens of thousands of people that we don't want this G20 summit, that we are against this summit in Hamburg, and we will rebel against it. And therefore, I wish to invite everybody to join us on the Deichtorplatz today. Thank you very much, Nico Berg. And now I welcome Gabriele Heinecke, who's made it from the Emergency Legal Aid. Meanwhile, we have quite a lot of experience with people who are in the interim custody center. Yesterday morning there was an incident when 200 people who marched towards the center of Hamburg. The special thing about these 200 people is that quite a lot of them were dressed in black, and they met up very quickly with another group of black-clad people, only they had the word police on their backs. There were special forces, troops among them. The majority of the demonstrators tried to flee into the side streets. 17 people were arrested. 37 people, in fact, were arrested. This morning at 2, when I started my shift, people were still sitting in the interim custody center. And this is completely a violation of the rules about keeping people in custody. Nobody is allowed to be sitting so long in custody. And our instruction from the emergency legal aid is not complied with by the police. The state prosecutor has issued warrants for arrest across the city. We consider this to be a crime against the federal state law. The state prosecutor seems to have issued absurd lectures, and most of the people who were arrested are at the moment in custody and will probably be until tomorrow, in custody until tomorrow afternoon around 3. Our argumentation that one is innocent before proven guilty, that the police did not specify individuals that they wished to take with them, and we consider this to be a violation of basic rights and therefore illegal. This specially instigated court in Harburg for such cases, I want to give you a brief update about. It is as if you were in a military court in the desert when you arrive there. The judiciary are wearing blue vests. The defense are wearing pink vests. The police are wearing yellow vests, and it's a very strange atmosphere, not at all in keeping with what we're used to with a civil court. It gives the impression that the dialogue is not particularly effective between the various parties. It is not a special court, and yet it is a special court. It's the G20 summit court. And on the part of the police, there seems to be a wide prejudice against certain people, and this is not productive. The state prosecutor this morning has not issued any more warrants for arrest because they see themselves there's no sense in it. But those people who have been brought into custody remain in custody. I wish to comment on what Nico Berg said. My office is in the colonnades. I left at 2:30 yesterday afternoon, and I only arrived in my office at 7 o'clock because I could not get through. There were police blockades, and my explanation that I needed to get into my office didn't help me at all. As I tried circling around to get to the Alster, I met the Block G20 people. First of all, the Landungsbrücken and then in Baumwall. And you said, Gabi, we need people to demonstrate, and I stayed with you. And I was able to experience that Beethoven's Ninth was being played for the dictators. As I saw that 50 people became 800 people. The police came with horses and then suddenly disappeared somewhere else. And it was possible for an hour to hold conversations, and then the police came again and said, okay, that's it, this is the blue zone, and we had to go away. This solidarity that I experienced, the fact that so many people participated, and by the way, also residents from this neighborhood, was very impressive and moving. And we love culture, but we don't need Beethoven Ninths. We need more freedom, we need more democracy, and we don't need a state of emergency. We reminded you at the beginning that we didn't want to have debates. And now I welcome Renate Angstmann-Koch from the Union of Journalists. I can agree with you. We need freedom of assembly. We need freedom of speech. We need freedom for the press. And in this state of emergency in which this city finds itself, and the press freedom is under pressure, and therefore I want to say something about how things have gone in the last few days. I'm speaking for the presidency of our organization in Germany. We had 6 colleagues who were refused accreditation or who had their issued accreditation taken away from them without any reason given. One of them, the police simply said that there were significant reasons. So they voiced significant reasons without explaining what they were. This is absolutely unacceptable for us. A press card has to be enough that one is allowed as a journalist to report. We have the impression that a particular spectrum of journalism is being excluded from the G20 discourse. Our organization appealed against this decision to withdraw accreditation from the journalists. And this is currently being disputed with the police. Unfortunately, we don't have great hopes that the decision by the police to withdraw accreditation will be overturned before the end of the G20 summit. We will also investigate whether to lodge a claim with the administration court, since local authorities tend to play for time in such situations. Regardless of the express lawsuit that we intend to lodge, we expect to be successful since there's a precedent set by the Heiligen Damm summit in 2007 that accreditation may not be withdrawn, and that this is not in keeping with the basic law on freedom of speech. That's one thing. The second thing I want to tell you, in principle, we want to tell you that everyone who's been affected by these kinds of repressive practices, please come to us and we will guarantee you protection for the press. What we've experienced in Hamburg, but many other colleagues are also familiar with, is a sort of general prevention of the press by the police, maintaining that the classic thing that they tell us is that people are not let through and that a press card is not enough to enter. We had many complaints about this particular kind of incident, and we are bound to receive more complaints of this kind, because people have been writing via Twitter and other media that while the Schanzenpark was being cleared by the police, that they had been told that they were directly threatened also with weapons, and told that the freedom of the press was no longer relevant. Professional journalists must be allowed to report on the situation, and therefore they must have access to sites. Journalism convey freedom of the press, and it is not acceptable that they are prevented by the police. We tried before the summit to get in touch with the local authorities, in particular the Minister for Internal Affairs, and try to make them aware of the tension, but we never heard back from them. And then I'd like to come to a third problem. In recent days, there were attacks by demonstrators on members of the press in order to prevent them from taking pictures. This is not acceptable. Freedom of the press must be allowed. It doesn't matter whether that's a Pegida member or a neo-Nazi, or whether it's from an autonomous left-wing demonstrator. The press has a right to report freely on events, and this means that photographers must not have stones thrown at them or similar. That's all I have to say. We insist that journalists must be able to do their work freely, without restriction, and we believe in freedom for the press. Thank you.
Renate Angstmann-Koch von der Deutschen Journalisten-Union. Und jetzt gehen wir über in den öffentlichen Teil.
Now I'd like to invite the audience to voice their questions.
Hoch in die Luft, damit die Kollegin mit dem Mikrofon sie sieht. Und wie gewohnt bitte den Namen Ihres Mediums nennen und die Person, an die die Frage gerichtet ist. Bitte sehr.
Jamila Benkeloff from NDR. Question directed to Nico Berg and perhaps afterwards to Werner Rätz. You spoke about people, you got to where you shouldn't have been. If I understand you correctly, you consider this an excess. You tell us about massive violence by the police. What do you say about the riots around Landungsbrücken that reached the Schanzen neighborhood? We've just been to the Schanzen neighborhood. It's an absolute mess. What do you say to this? The procession that left at 3 p.m. yesterday, the Millerntor Platz, got as far as the Baumwall. On the way, met the police. That was the part that Block G20, as Gabriele Heinecke explained, that was our protest and our speeches. After that, at 6 p.m., we ended our protest. So therefore, I can only say to answer your question, what happened after that was not part of Block G20. Are you distancing yourself from what took place at Landungsbrücken? There was a massive black bloc, so-called, and afterwards, I don't have to repeat what happened at the Schanze. That was not Block G20, that's all I can say to that. I must ask again, do you distance yourself from what happened? I can only say it was not part of our protest. It was not part of the initiative by Block G20. Herr Rätz, what do you say? It's not a question of whether we distance ourselves or not. When that is no use to anybody. The point is political. We have formulated a very specific criticism to the topics and issues of G20 summit, and we have expressed this criticism on the streets. In our alliance, we have a very clear agreement about the way we demonstrate and about the way we express our opinion, and what happened yesterday evening has nothing to do with the pictures that we want to create and leave. And the idea that an organized structure would occur to an organized structure that the night before a protest that had been organized for a year before to provoke the police and the residents, the idea that this could be part of an organized protest structure, that it cannot be. So we want to express our opinion on the street, and we have absolutely no interest that any other kind of a violent picture should disrupt that. Next question, please. Hamburger Abendblatt. Question to Werner Rätz. Your alliance yesterday at the press conference and today again spoke about the solidarity and the pictures that we would rather not have seen. Does this solidarity reach out to massive violations of rights in the Schanzenviertel? Our solidarity extends to the participants of our protest. Many autonomous movements are also part of our organization and structure, and we agreed amongst ourselves about a particular atmosphere that we want to create with our demonstration. We want to have a demonstration where everybody feels safe, including people who don't have a German passport, or also handicapped people, families with children. And we want to march together, and we want to arrive together in our demonstration. That is a clear, unequivocal agreement amongst ourselves, and we want to prevent that nobody has a reason to accuse of us of having any other idea except that. And our solidarity is based on this agreement amongst ourselves. If people in a different place do something else, that neither affects our solidarity in the sense that it stops us behaving in a solidarity manner, and it means that we do not need to delineate ourselves from this. Our solidarity extends to our alliance. That is our agreement amongst ourselves, and this is what I make clear to you now. Next question, please. From the Junge Welt. Question to Gabriele Heinecke. How long were people held in the custody? The police say that it was not longer than 10 hours, and otherwise they'll be charged. The people I talked to were sitting there at 11 p.m. They were charged at 4 o'clock in the morning. 17 hours they were in custody before they were formally charged by a police officer. That's the background that I can offer you. May I make a remark on freedom of assembly? The freedom of assembly always had to be fought, and it was not fought by people who are criminals, and it is fought by people who are civil citizens of the city.
Die nächste Frage. Gibt es noch eine Frage? Bitte deutlich die Hand heben, da hinten.
Peter Nowak. Question to Renate Koch. Campaign against Springer. I have to condemn this. When journalists from Springer expect protection of the state, we need to differentiate between journalists.
Das wäre genau meine Frage, genau. Also dann müssten Sie ja auch die Springer-Kampagne verurteilen, weil die richtet es ja auch damals gegen Journalisten.
Das war keine Frage, das war ein Statement.
Ich würde trotzdem, wenn ich darf, ganz kurz was dazu sagen.
I can say something on this. It's quite simple. We have a press code. We have a clear concept of working as a journalist, that they have to protect their informants, that they have to keep things confidential information, and I don't need to say anything else to that. Further questions? Question about press cards to Renate Angstmann-Koch. This is a very old situation. I've experienced this in Heiligendamm and in Frankfurt. Why hasn't it been solved? I'm a member of Verdi, and I ask everybody, and we don't seem to have an answer. What I can tell you that what is being done, that is the attempt to agree with the Minister of the Internal Affairs so that we have a different way of proceeding with the situation with the press cards, so that we seem to have more acceptance amongst state bodies and authorities, which organizations are authorized to carry and issue press cards. This will be the associations of journalists and some others as well. The problem is, of course, very old. However, we continue to demand that the people issuing press cards, that they investigate whether people receiving the cards are legitimate journalists. It can't be an arbitrary decision by the local authorities who is allowed to report on events or not. It can't be the job of journalists and their professional bodies to train policemen. That is somebody else's job. Last questions, please. The events on the street are about to happen. No further question? Then thank you very much for attending this morning. Thank you to our guests on the podium. And remind you that tomorrow our press conference, final press conference of the Independent Media Center, FCMC, will take place at the usual time of 9:30 here in the Stadium of St. Pauli in Hamburg. I wish you a good day. See you tomorrow.